You unroll a crumbling, dust-covered parchment deep inside a pitch-black cave. The dry leather flakes against your skin. The air is heavy with the scent of undisturbed earth and forgotten centuries. You hold your lantern closer to the faded Aramaic letters flickering in the dim light. They describe towering giants devouring the earth. They speak of rebellious angels trading forbidden celestial weapons for human daughters. But what you are reading was considered so dangerous, it was deliberately erased from history. You might assume the religious texts you know today have always been exactly the same. You would be wrong. For hundreds of years, the text you are holding was not a fringe document. It was mainstream. It was deeply respected. Your ancestors might have read it as the absolute, literal history of the cosmos. When archaeologists unearthed the Dead Sea Scrolls in the middle of the 20th century, they made a stunning discovery inside Qumran Cave 4. The strict desert sect living there kept copies of this exact text. They placed it right alongside the traditional books of Genesis and Isaiah. They considered it equally important. So what changed? Who decided you were no longer allowed to read the Book of Enoch? To understand the banishment, you have to understand the crime it describes. The Book of Enoch expands on a very brief, cryptic passage in the Book of Genesis. It tells the complete, uncensored story of the Watchers. These were a specific class of angels assigned by the Creator to observe humanity. But they did not just watch. 200 of these celestial beings, led by a commander named Semyaza, made a dark pact on the snowy summit of Mount Hermon. They chose to descend to the earthly realm. They took human women as their wives, and they triggered a catastrophic chain of events that nearly destroyed the ancient world. Are you beginning to see why this made later theologians so uncomfortable? The text gets aggressively specific. It details exactly what these fallen angels taught humanity in exchange for their earthly desires. An angel named Azazel taught men the art of metallurgy. He showed your ancestors how to forge swords, knives, and heavy bronze shields. He introduced the devastating weapons of war. He also taught women how to make cosmetics, mirrors, and jewelry to unnaturally enhance their beauty. An angel named Barakijal taught astrology. Kokabel taught the meaning of the constellations. Sariel explained the course of the moon. Another angel named Semjaza taught root cuttings and magical spells. This was forbidden technology. In the Enochian worldview, human civilization did not naturally evolve through hard work and simple ingenuity. It was artificially accelerated by rogue celestial beings. The angels handed humanity the keys to its own destruction. Does that change how you look at the origins of human progress? But the trade of technology was only the beginning of the nightmare. The union between the Watchers and human women produced offspring. These were the Nephilim. They were not just tall men. They were towering, unnatural giants with an insatiable hunger. The text states that the Nephilim quickly consumed all the agricultural acquisitions of men. When the humans could no longer feed them, the giants turned on humanity. They began to devour birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes. And eventually, they began to devour one another. The earth was crying out. Blood was flowing in the streets of ancient cities. This completely reframes the most famous disaster story in human history. In this ancient text, the Great Flood was not just a punishment for everyday human sin. The floodwaters were unleashed as a desperate apocalyptic cleansing. The earth had to be washed clean of the Nephilim. The genetic corruption of the Watchers had to be scrubbed from the surface of the world. The Watchers quickly realized they had made a terrible mistake. They were terrified of the divine retribution coming for them. So they turned to a human for help. They turned to Enoch. Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah. He was considered the most righteous man on earth. The fallen angels begged Enoch to write a petition to heaven on their behalf. They wanted him to ask for their forgiveness. Enoch wrote their petition. He read it aloud near the waters of Dan. But the Creator rejected it completely. There would be no peace for the watchers. Instead, Enoch is taken on a terrifying cosmic journey. He is lifted into the heavens. He is shown the exact prisons where the fallen angels will be tortured for eternity. He sees Azazel bound hand and foot, cast into absolute darkness under the jagged rocks of the desert. Enoch is also shown the end of time. The book is heavily focused on eschatology. This is the theological term for the study of the final judgment and the end of the world. The scholar George W. E. Nicholsburg spent his career analyzing these specific visions. He noted that Enoch's prophecies were profoundly revolutionary. They promised that the corrupt rulers of the earth would be utterly destroyed. They promised that a chosen Son of Man would arrive to execute cosmic justice. You can imagine why early believers were captivated by this. In the 1st century, the Book of Enoch was incredibly popular. Early Jewish mystics studied it closely. The first generations of Christians quoted it directly. If you look closely at the modern Bible, the Book of Jude actually quotes Enoch by name. The early church thinker, Tertullian, openly defended it. He argued it was a genuine prophecy. He believed the text survived the Great Flood because Noah himself protected it on the ark. So why was it violently pushed out of the acceptable canon? The canon is simply the official, authorized list of accepted religious books. By the late 2nd and 3rd centuries, the political and religious climate was changing. The institutions of faith were centralizing their power. They needed order. They needed a unified, simple message. The Book of Enoch was chaotic. It was terrifying. It gave too much power and autonomy to rogue angels. It suggested that evil did not just come from human choices, but from a cosmic rebellion that humanity was helpless to stop. Theologians began to actively suppress it. Prominent leaders like Jerome and Augustine argued aggressively against it. They could not accept the idea that pure, spiritual angels could have physical relations with human women. It offended their strict theological sensibilities. So they changed the narrative. They declared that the sons of God mentioned in Genesis were just righteous human men, not angels. They actively stripped the supernatural terror out of the story. The Book of Enoch was labeled as pseudepigrapha. This is a scholarly term for a text that falsely claims to be written by an ancient figure. The authorities argued that Enoch did not actually write it. They claimed it was a later forgery. By the 4th century, the text was officially banned from the Western Church. It was systematically hunted down. Copies were burned. Those who continued to read it were marginalized and silenced. The book slowly faded into myth. The silence lasted for over 1,000 years. But here is the counterintuitive twist you did not see coming. The Book of Enoch was never actually lost. It was just geographically isolated. While the Roman Empire and the Western Church were busy erasing the Watchers from history, an entire civilization was quietly keeping the text alive. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church never removed Enoch from their Bible. They preserved it. They copied it faithfully, generation after generation, in their ancient Ge'ez language. They protected it in the high, isolated mountain monasteries of East Africa. According to the renowned Dead Sea Scrolls scholar James Vanderkam, the Ethiopian Church considered Enoch to be a fully inspired foundational text. They did not care what Rome or Constantinople thought. They held the line. They understood that you cannot erase history just because it makes the present uncomfortable. It wasn't until the year 1773 that a Scottish explorer named James Bruce brought 3 copies of the text back to Europe. The Western world was stunned. The lost book had been hiding in plain sight. In 1912, the scholar R. H. Charles published a comprehensive English translation of the text. He unlocked the secrets of the Watchers for the modern world. His translation revealed exactly what the ancient desert sects had been reading all along. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were found decades later, the Aramaic fragments from Qumran perfectly matched the Ethiopian texts. The chain of custody was unbroken. A bridge of over 2,000 years was suddenly reconnected. This ancient drama directly mirrors the world you live in today. Who filters your truth? Today, you are constantly told what is safe to read, what is acceptable to watch, and what ideas are considered dangerous. We look back at ancient councils banning books and we think they were primitive. But they were doing exactly what modern algorithms and institutions do right now. They curated the narrative. They hid the chaotic, terrifying truths to maintain social order. They decided that you were not capable of handling the raw, unfiltered history of the cosmos. The suppression of Enoch was not an accident. It was a deliberate act of intellectual control. You unroll that crumbling, dust-covered parchment deep inside the pitch-black cave. The dry leather flakes against your skin. You realize that you are not just reading history. You are holding a surviving fragment of a forbidden reality. The Watchers descended. The forbidden technology was shared. The giants walked the earth. And the only reason you know this story is because someone, somewhere, refused to let the fire of the ancients go out.